Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Keith Brooks. I like to do these 100 days of things. So I've done like 100 days of musical instruments and Batman and happiness and movies. And I had a couple of other ideas of things I wanted to do, but I am a member of SAG-AFTRA. My day job is I'm an actor, if you couldn't tell from my good looks and theatricality. But with the current strike, there are certain things that we're not allowed to do, such as promote previous work or work owned by companies that we were striking against. So that kind of got rid of a couple of different ideas that I had. So I tried to figure out something else I could do because this strike is happening, and it's very important because this right here is a check that I received from a very popular television show, and this is how much they paid me. But I want to put some positivity in the world, and these are always a good challenge for me to sort of, try to fit in my already overwhelming schedule. What do I like? I like to learn, and I like animals. So we're going to do 100 days of animals. And we're gonna start day one with A. A is for armadillo. Armadillo or armadillo, in Spanish literally means little armored one. And that's what these guys are. It is a new world placental mammal, which sounds gross. It belongs to the order Sigillata, and if we go to the super order of the animal, Xenothara, I think is its name, we can find that it also is related to animals like the sloth and anteater. They're all like cousins. There are 9 extinct species of the armadillo, but 21 living species now. Some of those more endangered than others, and some of those we really don't have enough information about. But armadillos live in the Americas, mostly Central and South America, though there is one species that is found in North America, and that is the 9-banded armadillo, which brings up one of the points about how some of these animals are named. The back of the armadillo is probably its most iconic feature. It's this hard sort of shell that makes it look like a roly-poly mammal, and oftentimes the species of the armadillo will be named after how many bands are perceived to be on the back. Thus the 9-banded, or the 3-banded, or the 2-banded. That hard shell on their back when armadillos are first born is like a leathery skin thing, but hardens quickly. For most armadillos, that is made out of bone. And some armadillos will even grow keratin on top of the bone to make it even harder as a defense mechanism against other animals or any predators. It's even been reported multiple times that people, who are sometimes jerks, will try to shoot the armadillo, and the bullet will ricochet off of the back of the animal and bounce back and kill the person, which is just nature putting karma in your face. Now, those plates and bands on the back are kind of like scales, but when we're talking about armadillos, they're called scutes, but spelled cute with an S in front of it, scutes, like that sort of thing, which I just think is adorable. Armadillos are omnivores, meaning that they eat carrion, they eat vegetables, and they eat meat as well, sometimes reptiles and amphibians, depending on what their size is, but their favorite snack across the board gotta be ants and termites. Just delicious. Don't knock it till you try it, man. They're known for having really long noses and tongues that extend pretty far, because when they're hunting for bugs, they sort of like stick their nose in to burrow and latch their tongue out to get any insects stuck to it, so that way they can retract it and eat all of the insects. Armadillos, unfortunately, have really bad eyesight, but they have a great sense of smell. And at the bottom of the armadillo, across its belly, you can see something like these hairs called curb feelers. And they operate the same way a cat's whiskers do, alerting them to what's around them, what's near them, all that sort of stuff. Armadillos tend to live in warm, damp areas, mostly like wetlands and swamps. That's why a lot of times you'll find them, the 9-banded in North America, in places like Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. Though they go all the way north to Indiana and all the way east to North Carolina, and all the way west to California. This right here is the giant armadillo. It grows to about 6 feet long and can weigh up to 175 pounds in captivity. I feel you, buddy. Its middle claw is 8 inches long, making it the longest claw for any mammal. On the opposite end of that spectrum, this is the pink fairy armadillo. He's about 4 inches long and weighs 3 ounces. This is the screaming hairy armadillo, which I've never related to a creature more in my life. When threatened by a predator, he will scream like the fucking banshee. And the idea there is if I'm loud enough, you'll go away. This little guy is called the Peachy, and he's the only armadillo to actually hibernate. In addition to hibernating, he does something called the topor, which is like a mini daily hibernation. Just relatable in every way. You might have seen armadillos in cartoons or in comics, and the iconic idea of them sort of like when they get scared, curling up into a ball to protect themselves. Well, that actually happens. But out of the 21 existent species, only 2 are known to do that. One is the Brazilian 3-banded armadillo, and the second is the southern 3-banded armadillo. And in fact, when they ball up and they're all tight and protective, kind of look like a soccer ball. So much so that the World Cup in Brazil actually used a 3-banded armadillo named Fulico as their mascot. As mentioned earlier, the only armadillo native to the United States, though it migrated from South America, is the 9-banded armadillo. Now, this armadillo can hold its breath for up to 6 minutes. And how does it use that? Well, if it has to go somewhere, it can literally walk across the bottom of a lake or river or creek to get wherever it's going, holding its breath the entire time. And if it's too long of a walk to hold its breath, the 9-banded armadillo can take in air, inflating its stomach and its intestines to make it buoyant enough to float atop of the water, which is sort of insane. The 9-banded armadillo also is the only species of mammal known to, every time they have babies, have 4 identical same-sex babies, all with the genesis of splitting from a singular egg. Not like duck egg, but internal. We're talking biology sort of shit here. The 9-banded armadillo is so prominent in Texas, it is actually the state's animal. Baby armadillos are called pups, and that's the cutest thing in the world. Armadillos burrow underground and like to sleep for up to 16 hours a day. High five, buddy. That's the dream life. They are nocturnal animals and the only mammal with a hard shell. Such a unique fact that the Nahuatl, or the Aztec word for the armadillo, is Ayototitla, which means turtle rabbit. And I love that. The Brazilian 3-banded armadillo was believed to be extinct up until 1988, when all of a sudden it was rediscovered. Animals like this, believed to be extinct but rediscovered to be alive, are often referred to as Lazarus species. One of its ancestors, the great-grandpa of armadillos, and still technically an armadillo, is called the Glyptodont. It's this fucker right here. This guy weighed 2 tons. It first appeared 35 million years ago and went extinct roughly the last ice age. Humans coexisted with this guy and would hunt it down for food and using its shell for shelter. And sadly, the truth is a lot of people still to this day eat armadillo. It was considered a food staple in America in the 1930s during the Great Depression, often referred to as Hoover hog. Their shells were used as instrumentation, and to this day still people will eat armadillo, but that is not without its risk. Armadillo is the only non-human animal able to spread the disease known as leprosy, or Hansen's disease. It is not the only animal that can get leprosy or be a vector for it. That also includes megabay monkeys, rabbits, and mice. But armadillos specifically have a low enough body temperature for the bacteria that causes Hansen's disease to flourish, and are able to spread it to people when people either consume the animal, handle the animal, or from fecal spores produced by the armadillo. Armadillos are also a vector for the disease known as Chagas disease, but they are docile creatures, considered chill and cool in temperament. They just like to sleep and eat bugs, and can't we all relate to that? Thank you so much for tuning in to day 1 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. My name is Keith Brooks. The world is full of beautiful creatures, and I hope that we all learn from them, learn about them, respect them, and aspire to be one of them. Thanks, guys. Bye. And welcome to another day where we're exploring the amazing inhabitants of the animal kingdom. And today, B is for bat, or also known as a Gotham City pigeon. Bats are classified as Chiroptera, the Greek term meaning hand wing, and that's because bats' wings are made from their hands. Literally, what happens, their fingers are the same type of bones that we have, just a little more brittle and a little more hollow, but stretching in between them is a thin membrane skin. family known as the patagium. They make up 20% of all mammals known and classified, with over 1,400 species. Bats are typically divided into two different categories, either the mostly fruit-eating bat, the megabat, or the mostly echolocating bat, the microbat. They are the only mammal actually capable of sustained flight, from one of the most widely spread out creatures in the entire world, existing almost everywhere except for super cold regions. Now, contrary to popular belief, not all bats are actually nocturnal. A lot of bats hang out in the day, or they spend most of their time operating in that dusk and dawn area. But bats that are nocturnal rely on something called echolocation. What echolocation is when a bat emits a sound, generally ultrasonic, every 15 to 20 seconds, vibrating it out to the air and listening for the echoes, right? Those echoes giving it a mental picture of where everything is, because they can hear what it bounces off of. The popular phrase blind as a bat is not true. While microbats don't have the best of eyesight and can only see in black and white, megabats have great eyesight, on par with most birds, which are better than humans' eyesight, and megabats see in full color. Key element of the bat's existence within the ecosystem of the Earth is that they are one of the most busy and productive pollinators to exist. In fact, they help spread plants like mangoes, bananas, agave, guava, balsa wood, all of that stuff grows because bats spread the seeds. In fact, in the old world, meaning Europe, Asia, and Africa, over 50% of their forests are thanks to bats. But the vast majority of bats are insectivores, meaning they feed on insects. This little guy is a pipistrelle, and the pipistrelle can eat up to 3,000 bugs every single night, while the common brown bat can eat 1,200 mosquitoes every single hour. Now, it's estimated between all the diseases that mosquitoes carry, they take 750,000 human lives every year. Bats are a huge part of keeping those insect numbers down, and not just mosquitoes, but all sorts of bugs that attack crops and people. It's estimated that bats save American farmers $53.7 billion every year with pesticides. And that's just in the United States. But some insects that are on their menu have developed different techniques to ward off the bats. For example, some moths have developed the ability to send their own emission of signals, either to jam the bat's echolocation or convince the bat that this moth is poisonous and you shouldn't eat me. Echolocation occurs in different species different ways, either through the mouth or through the nose itself, one of those places being the origin of the sound. Some bats have something called a nose leaf that helps propel the sound of the echolocation. Bats make other sounds. Other than their echolocation sounds, they make clicks, they make grunts, they make chirps, they purr, they also sing sometimes. Some bats sing! And most of all of these noises are ultrasonic on either side of the spectrum, either too high for us to hear or too low for us to hear. The hammerhead bat, a very sexually dimorphous animal, this is a male here. Anytime it's trying to attract a female mate, it makes a deep, resonating monotone sound. Greater bulldog bats honk when flying to avoid collisions and to help direct traffic. Little yellow-shouldered bat has the ability to secrete a chemical from its shoulders that puts a spicy smell out in the air to help females find it so they can have their spicy times. Greater sac-wing bat, which was also my nickname in college, has sacs in its wings that combine different chemicals like saliva and urine, with which it will then spray the roost, which is where they sleep, to mark their territory. This is known as salting. But when female bats are ready to give birth, often they will create something called the maternal colony, where it's a bunch of female bats about to give birth, so they can all give birth together, support each other, and groom their babies together. Now, the pallid bat here consumes mostly scorpions, even the most venomous scorpions on the planet. And it's proven that this bat is immune to all of those scorpion venoms. The bats actually sleep. They hang upside down from trees, caves, man-made structures, anything like that. And there's a space with their feet and where their tail, or the wing itself, ends that bats can sort of cup into like a pouch almost and put things in it. That's fucking insane. They could put food or babies or whatever I call it their grocery bag. Nobody else does. On bats' wings, though it's a thin skin membrane, there is something called Merkel cells, the same type of cells that we find on our fingertips that give us such sensitivity when we're touching something. For a bat, this helps them determine the air current and allows them to pick what speed they should be flying at. Bats generally only have one baby or pup, which is what it's called, a year, and they can live up to 30 years. One bat even reportedly living 41 years old. Kit's pig-nosed bat, or the bumblebee bat of Thailand, is the smallest bat in the world. The largest bat in the world is the golden crowned flying fox. Two species of bat are known to eat other bats, those being the ghost bat and the spectral bat. Vampire bats are real, but there are only 3 species of vampire bats in the entire world. It divides its prey amongst birds and livestock, mostly cattle itself. And how it actually works is the bats will find a tender spot of the body while the animal is sleeping, then using its teeth make a piercing, and instead of drinking through the fangs as if they were straws, just lap it up with their tongues. Vampire bats only need 2 tablespoons of blood a night to survive. The creepiest aspect is once they find a food source, they keep coming back to it. The vast majority of these attacks are completely harmless to the animals with which they're feeding on. It's such a minuscule amount of blood. But what happens when the bat bites is its saliva has an anticoagulant that gets into the wound, causing the wound to take longer to heal. The biggest risk of this is that these wounds could lead to infection if not properly treated. The other big risk is that bats are often vectors for diseases that can spread to the more mammalian livestock like cows. One of these diseases is rabies. The Aztecs had a god named Mictlantecuhtli, which was a bat god that was also the god of the dead. And in Tonga, the bat is a sacred animal, representing a separated soul. Now, bat guano, or bat droppings, their poop, is a highly sought after fertilizer. I didn't read a lot about the poop section. In Austin, there's something called the Congress Avenue Bridge that has 1.5 million bats roosting on it. There's also a place in Texas called the Bracken Bat Cave that has the world's largest colony of bats that's roughly 20 million bats. But some bats live a solitary life, like the mouse-eared bat. When it moves out of its parents' home, it lives alone for the rest of its life. When a female bat is giving birth, it will hang head first in order to use gravity to assist with the birth. Then the baby bat will fall freeform, and mama bat will have to catch it with her feet, do the little grocery bag thing, and put it in there. That's kind of fun. All of these creatures, unfortunately, can be vectors for diseases like rabies and are preyed upon by parasites like bat bugs. Yet, bats are one of the only non-aquatic animals to be completely resistant to lice for some reason. Over 50% of the bat population in the United States of America is considered endangered or at risk. Though bats are 100% capable of spreading diseases like rabies and or SARS, they are also vectors for the coronavirus. But surprisingly, there has never, ever been an example of a bat having the virus known as COVID-19, being a vector for COVID-19, or giving someone COVID-19. That entire story and narrative was just not true. Yet one of the biggest things and threats facing bats, other than being poached, other than the destruction of their homes and their environments, is something called the white nose syndrome, a bacteria and fungus that passes from bat to bat, wiping out millions of colonies across the world. Scientists and researchers are doing all they can to find a way to stop this from taking out the bat population. Whether you like them or not, whether you listen to these children of the night and the sweet music they make, they are an indisputable, important part of our ecosystem. Bats are our friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. Day 2 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. My eyebrows are crazy. I look like a Dr. Seuss character. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in while we discuss the cool wonders of the animal kingdom. My name is Keith Brooks, and today the letter C stands for the checkerboard worm lizard, or a miniature version of those creepy snakes from Beetlejuice. Checkerboard worm lizard is a legless lizard, or an Amphisbaenium. Amphisbaenia is a section of squamates that have either rescinded or completely lost all of their limbs. They're named after the mythical creature creature Amphisbaenia, who was a snake or a serpent with two heads, one on each end. And that sort of idea helps you describe and picture what this guy looks like. Whereas a snake will have a head and then a tail that comes to a fine point, the Amphisbaenia look kind of like they have a head on both sides. Their tails are a bit more rounded out and sort of look the same as their front end. No offense, guys. They're often pinkish in color, so they get confused a lot for giant earthworms, and they kind of are a hybrid between earthworms and snakes with a little bit of lizard thrown in. That's a simplified way to understand them, though they did evolve from the regular wall-crawling, tree-crawling lizards that you know and love. Squamate just means scaled reptile. So most reptiles that you can think of fall into this category. It is the second most numerous order of all extant vertebrates after a specific type of fish, with over 10,900 species. Now, the actual species is named the Dragonophis weigmanni, and it's named after the German herpetologist Friedrich Weigmann. Although he did not discover it, the animal was originally discovered in 1830 and lives mostly in the Palearctic region, which that is northern Africa and southern Asia. This guy primarily hangs out in Africa, places like Morocco, Tunisia, Algiers. That's where you can find this dude chilling. There are two varieties of this species, with not many differences between them other than their coloration. One is a light palish yellow and one is a light palish pink. They're burrowing creatures. They like to dig in the dirt, so you'll often find them hanging out in sand, maybe some mud, under some rocks, stuff like that, just sort of chilling. Now, with a lot of legless lizards, one of the key identifying factors separating them from snakes is that they will have ear holes. But when it comes to worm lizards, lizards that burrow, they do not have ear holes, but still have great hearing. It's just they've evolved not to have those openings, so when they dig, dirt doesn't fall inside, right? Because that's annoying, you know what I'm saying? Now, these guys are insectivores. They love to eat little buggies and other soil invertebrates, but their favorite snack of all time has got to be earthworms, which has got to be a mind fuckery for the earthworm, because it's like, oh, you're a giant version of me. Why are you eating me? But contrary to their worm-like appearances, squamates, differing than humans, have the specific ability to adjust their jaw bones. Think about how a snake will readjust its jaws. Almost all scaled reptiles can do that, including this guy. Gives him, for his size, a powerful little bite, meaning he can crush through all sorts of insects and exoskeletons. But still, I hear tell from these guys that earthworms are delicious. Their scales specifically are more round and cylindrical than maybe a snake's would be, allowing them to have the functionality of being able to move both backwards and forwards with the same amount of ease. It happens sort of like an accordion style movement where they compress, expand, compress, expand, compress, expand. And that's for more labored moving and digging. When they're actually just wandering about, they slither just like anything else you would see that doesn't have arms or legs. Now, most checkerboard worm lizards live a solo life. However, they do often pair together with a mate, but you will never see two of the same sex together. This is known as intersexual intolerance and just means that males will fight for dominance and females will fight to be the one that carries on the legacy and has more babies, that sort of thing. It was long thought that these animals were viviparous, but it's now believed through modern research they might be ovoviviparous, meaning that the embryonic process and the egg hatching happens within the mother itself. They are somewhat sexually dimorphous, where the male checkerboard worm lizard will have more of a black and whitish face, and the female will have a blackish whitish face with a small pale spot on her snout or her snoot or her nose, whatever you want to call it. They're super cute. Other than fighting for territory amongst themselves, they are considered docile creatures, and one of the crazy things about them is we don't know that much about these guys. They live in grassland areas and steppish regions and mountainous regions, everything you can imagine within that northern Africa, southern Asian atmosphere and topography. They like to keep to themselves, which I totally fucking understand. People suck. This little guy's only 4 inches long. And its impact on our environment and our world, and how it goes about its daily life, its own cultural animalistic behavior, is something we don't really know about. Not enough research has been done. Lived for about 4 years. It does, like the snake, do the little tongue hissy thingy. That's because the tongue has a lot of sensory instruments, allowing it to understand smell and get a better comprehension of its area, though it does have nostrils as well. Prior to doing this series, I had never heard of this animal. And one of the great things about it is, as I'm learning about it, so are scientists still. The world is full of mysteries that we have yet to explore, and though at times that might seem like a daunting or terrifying thing, it at least lets us know that there's more out there and more for us to find. Thank you so much for joining me for day 3 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Hi everybody, my name is Keith Brooks, and today the letter D stands for the damselfish, better known as the badass boss bitch of the sea. The damselfish is a group of fish that belong to about 4 or 5 different subfamilies, most of which belong in the actual family Pomacentridae. But it is important to distinguish that not all Pomacentridae are damselfish. It also has some of their evolutionary cousins, like the clownfish, which is super cool. Damselfish are a popular fish within aquariums, generally because of their beautiful colors. However, they are also known for their aggressive nature, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. It's an argued number, but it's estimated that there are roughly 200 to 320 something species of damselfish that are distinct from one another. They generally live in marine areas, though some damselfish actually find their homes in brackish or freshwater. The vast majority of damselfish are saltwater based, living in tropical or coral reefs where they eat algae, plankton, small crustaceans, but some do live outside of the Asiatic oceans that we often associate with them, such as the giant orange Garibaldi, which lives on the Pacific coast of Mexico and Southern California. Now, damselfish can be described as having a nostril on each side of their head, a long interrupted spinal fin, and 2 anal fins. But they're generally kept in aquariums because of their beautiful coloration, and because of the fact that they're hardy animals. The natural habitat often tends to be coral reefs, where the salinity of the water can vary drastically. Plus, they're around rocks all of the time. These kind of guys are tough. Changes in pH balance and cycling of water that would generally affect other fish don't affect the damselfish as much. Plus, like I said before, they're very pretty to look at and have the ability to change colors. This is the Caerulean damselfish, a fish that changes its colors when it's angry, when it's upset, when it's scared, or when it's sleeping. Most people describe it kind of like a neon sign. Now, almost all damselfish are territorial. That territorialness will change in certain species. Whereas certain species are only territorial against one of their same species, others are territorial against any fish that comes into their area, and oftentimes even their owners. Some types of damselfish will go after fingers and bite them as hard as they can, just because this is my rock, you can't have it. Yet other damselfish like to exist in shoals, which is like a group of fishy fish. This guy right here is known as the domino damselfish, and you can probably see why. During mating season and spawning season, they have developed the ability to shrink the size of their stomachs to allocate more food to their female partners. In addition to that, the male domino damselfish spends roughly 85% of its daytime foraging for food. When water currents are low, the domino damselfish and other small fish will go to the top of water columns, look for algae and plankton up there. When water currents are faster, they will find their way back towards the bottom of the water. The domino damselfish, when young, is actually like a grayer color, and it matures into that blacker hue that we see there. Sometimes as they age, they lose their spots. The vast majority of times that we've observed the domino damselfish changing its color is when it's sleeping. It's theorized that the connection to its color change is either an involuntary response while the animal is sleeping, or something related to its potential ability to dream. Domino damselfish often share sea anemones as their home base with clownfish, making Finding Nemo a more accurate than you thought type of film. This guy right here is called the chocolate dip or the chocolate chip damselfish, and he's my favorite because he looks like he's consistently arguing with you. He's not chocolate, he's not cute, he's ferocious. These guys like to travel in shoals, which again is like a school of fish, just not as organized, and you don't have as many classes. But the shoal of the chocolate chip damselfish moves with a great homogeny. If scared, all will disappear into the coral reef or the anemone, and all will find the ability to emerge at the same exact time. We're unaware if this is based on some sort of communication that they developed, a scent that they're emitting, or feeling the vibrations in the water. We just don't know. This right here is called the long-fin damselfish, and an interesting thing to note is that not only are they farmers, but they also keep pets. This guy right here is called the mysid shrimp, and long-fin damselfish will protect mysid shrimp, allowing them to move into their coral reef, because the mysid shrimp will then fertilize the algae that's needed to grow to feed the long-fin damselfish. But it's not that the long-fin damselfish will allow any shrimp into their house. They'll pick the ones they like specifically and eat the others. So it literally is a pet relationship that's happening there. Now, in a baby damselfish and a baby any fish is known as a fry, but the vast majority of female damselfish do not pick their mating partner based on size, looks, or the ability to fertilize a whole spawn of eggs. Instead, they pick it based on courtship. Damselfish practice something called signal jumping. What happens with signal jumping is a fish will allow itself to float up in a water current and then speedily swim down. As they are speedily swimming down, they will emit certain vibrations and pulses that are sounds that can be heard underwater, thus attracting mates. And the more often or more vigorously that a male damselfish can do this, the more a female damselfish will be attracted to said fish. The role of the father within the parentage is to protect the fry. So after the mother has laid the eggs and the father has fertilized them, it becomes the father's job to sit and watch the eggs and to protect them from anybody coming near them. The male Beaugregory damselfish is attracted to females that are a little bit thicker, if you know what I'm saying. High five. Ka-cha. The larger female fish carry more ovaries and more eggs, thus the potential for more of a spawn. This is the sapphire damselfish, often confused for the green damselfish. The difference here is the green damselfish tail is split, where the sapphire damselfish is not. This is the regal damselfish, and he's just fucking pretty. Look at these colors. The male bicolored damselfish is a polyamorous fish, seeking multiple females at the same time. The male Cortez damselfish, however, can be kind of a prick because he practices filial cannibalism. That means eating your young. Because damselfish tend to live in the most beautiful but also harshest areas, such as a coral reef, there's a high percentage of the fry that do not make it through the gestation period. Oftentimes, the male Cortez damselfish will choose cannibalism when they see that the benefits of this offspring do not outweigh the cost of the parental care. The smallest species of the damselfish is the Springer's damselfish, that's roughly about 2 inches long. The largest are the Garibaldi that we already discussed, and the giant damselfish, both of which can get to about 15 inches long. However, the general length of one is about 4 to 6 inches, which is totally fine. That's totally acceptable. Oldest fossilized damselfish that we have found is from the Middle Eocene epoch, which rates roughly 33 to 55 million years ago. Damselfish make sounds underwater, distinctive chirping and popping sounds recognized by other fish of the same species. Some species of damselfish are also known as cleaner fish, meaning that they help other marine animals by eating parasites off of them or clearing them of dead skin or scales. Since so many damselfish live in coral reefs, by eating the algae that overgrows on the coral reef, they are actually helping protect that reef and its ecosystem. However, an influx of too many damselfish can destroy that reef if too much algae is consumed. They have a societal hierarchy when existing in shoals. There are plenty of damselfish that live independent individual lives with just their mate, but some exist within a community. And in those communities, you will often have a dominant male and a dominant female that lead everyone else. However, if the dominant male dies and there is no other male in that social hierarchy, a female can sexually become a male to assume that role and secure the longevity of the species. Fucking crazy. Life will find a way. Some damselfish, when frightened, will play dead on the ocean floor, lying completely still but keeping one eye open just to either freak out or wait for the predator to leave. Not that predator, though that would be an intense match. These are amazing, cool, clever creatures that are absolutely beautiful, stunning, and it shows you the variety that can exist within one species. If we can see that much variety in them, imagine all the variety we can see in ourselves. Thanks for watching day 4 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Bye, everybody. Hi, my name is Keith Brooks. Thank you for joining me. And today the letter E stands for the elephant beetle. Or what if you were going to try to draw a Triceratops as a bug? Elephant beetle, or the Megasoma elephas, is a member of the Scarabidae family, commonly referred to as scarabs. Now, while beetles have over 400,000 species, making them consist of 1/4 of all animal life on this planet. They also have some really good albums. But scarabs, specifically a smaller family within that group, are defined by their hard front wings. This guy has those. It is a neotropical, meaning Central and South America animal of the rhinoceros beetle genus. Now, a lot of people will confuse rhinoceros beetles for elephant beetles, but they are not exactly the same thing. The rhinoceros beetle is the larger family, and the elephant beetle is the species amongst that. All elephant beetles are rhinoceros beetles, but not all rhinoceros beetles are elephant beetles. Generally, they have a black color and are covered in these microscopic hairs, but the species is very sexually dimorphic, and this is one of the ways it is. The male elephant beetle will have more hairs than the female, and these hairs will take on a yellowish hue, giving the insect a very specific color. The male elephant beetle will also have 2 horns protruding from the head and another horn protruding from the protolorx, which is like the first segment of the legs. The female has no horns, but it's this longest horn which gives the elephant beetle its name, because it kind of looks like an elephant trunk. It uses this horn to defend itself, to show off to its mates, and to pull tree bark off of trees so it can get at the delicious sap beneath. These guys are herbivores. I know they look scary, but in fact, they love to eat nutrients from the soil, vegetables, fruit, tree sap, specific types of bark. They love pineapple, not even joking, and any sort of decaying matter, but we'll get to that soon. Elephant beetles tend to range between 3 to 12 centimeters in length, the largest being reported at 13.7 centimeters, including the horn. That was male. The males are considerably larger than the females, but female elephant beetles will give birth in decaying logs or in the soil itself beneath the decaying logs, planting the larvae in the dirt to keep it safe and warm. Now, they are living in rainforest areas, but even there, sometimes it gets cold, and even adult beetles will get a little chilly, and what they'll do is they'll dig themselves into the dirt to get all warm and tuck themselves in. The larvae will be in the soil or in the decaying log for a couple of weeks before it emerges as a C-shaped grub, white, brown heads, about 6 legs, and they start feeding off of all the dying organic material, trees, plants, stuff like that. It has been known for grubs and larvae in these early stages to commit cannibalism, eating their fellow brethren and sisters in the larvae stage, but this has only been observed in captivity, when the elephant beetle is kept in too small and tight of a space. That larval and grub stage lasts for about 29 months, and the 3rd stage before adulthood is the pupal stage. This lasts for only about 5 weeks, and finally emerges as an adult elephant beetle. However, the sad thing, or at least tragic to me it seems, is that an adult elephant beetle, beautiful and majestic in all of its appearance, has a lifespan of roughly 3 months, even in captivity, even in the best of conditions. They spend the vast majority of their life, which is roughly 3 years, as children, growing up. In those last 3 months, they now must find a mate and start the life cycle process all over again. The vast majority of elephant beetles live in rainforests, and while they are not specifically nocturnal animals, they are more active at night, still able to move around and look for food during the daytime, but nighttime seems like the right time for these guys. However, being in the rainforest and the deforestation that's happening all across the world puts their environment and habitat at a great risk. Additionally, places like Costa Rica and Nicaragua and other Central American countries to have a craze for the elephant beetle, the male one's head, and will often make it as charms, also depleting the numbers. Now, while this horn looks motherfucking ferocious. It's important to cite that the elephant beetle does not have a prey drive or a kill drive like other insects might. In observation, even though the elephant beetle will use its horn to protect itself, it is rarely seen that the elephant beetle will use it to go for a kill. It is capable of doing such. This horn has the ability to pierce through tree bark, but the elephant beetle chooses pacifism. Now, there are two subspecies of this animal, the Megasoma elephas, which is the major elephant beetle, and the minor elephant beetle. One makes the sea a flat. That was a terrible fucking joke. The hairs on the elephant beetle are thicker at the elytra, which is the front part where the wings come out of. And it's believed that this helps with resistance for wind and stuff like that. But these guys are actually wonderful for the environment because what they're doing is they're helping get rid of decaying plants and plant matter and things that other animals can't feed off of. They take care of it. A lot of people will actually keep these as pets because they are so docile. They have a lovely behavior. They're curious. They like to be pets. They like to be handled. But elephant beetles in the wild are very resourceful. Oftentimes, when trying to secure and make sure that the female elephant beetle can give their young a better environment, they will take abandoned bird nests, abandoned beehives, anything they can find that has organic material to build up around where they're keeping their larvae, not only for protection, but also so the young can feed off of that stuff. An interesting note, researchers and scientists at the University of California, Berkeley, under direct orders from the Pentagon and the United States military, began implanting electric nodes inside of the pupae of elephant beetles in an attempt to control their flight patterns. There's no word whether or not this was successful or what exactly the military plans to use this research and technology for, but it's fucking crazy. It's like Spider-Man villain type of stuff. Look, I think it's very easy to be freaked out or scared by insects and their appearances, especially if it looks like they can like kill you. A lot of people, they kill cockroaches or spiders or flies, anything like that. This reminds me that sometimes we look at animal species and situations through the lens of fear. Look, if you live in the southern part of North America, Central America, or South America, any of those neotropical regions, there's a good chance that a beetle like this might wander into your home. They're attracted to lights and sounds, again, because they are curious. They just want to know what's going on. So the next time, before you step on an insect or a bug, punishing it for the crime of existing, think about how long on this earth it really has. Think about whether or not it covers itself up with a blanket of dirt at night to keep warm. Think about all the cool things this bug can do. And also be scared the military is using it to kill you. Thank you so much. Day 5 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Bye, everybody. Hi everybody, my name is Keith Brooks, and today the letter N stands for the Norwegian forest cat, also known as the fluffiest Viking around. The Norwegian forest cat is a long-haired cat with a triangular face and almond-shaped eyes native to Norway and other parts of Northern Europe. Those distinct features, as well as longer hind legs and shorter front legs, and a double coat separate it from other long-haired cat breeds. Taking about 5 years to reach maturity, males of the Norwegian forest cat breed can range anywhere from 12 to 20 pounds, while females range in the 9 to 14 pound range. But these cats were actually employed by Vikings on their Viking ships as Mausers, meant to catch the mice and the rats that hung out on the ship itself. And they were a huge part of Norwegian culture and mythos. It said that Freya, the queen goddess, used the Skogskat to pull her chariot. Now the Skogskat were giant versions of the Norwegian forest cat itself. It was believed that these Norwegian forest cat were descended from that greater fairy feline breed. To this day, still one of the key attributes for this breed is how agile they are. Norwegian forest cats are able to descend trees and rock-faced mountains going head first. The agility and the strength of their paws and muscles is absolutely incredible. But from the Viking ships to the houses that we can now find them in, they are a wonderful pet with a mild-mannered attitude, a docile composure, and very talkative. They are recognized by their long hair and their bushy tails, but they actually possess two coarse coats, one being the outer coat and the second one being the inner coat. This is from their original days in Norway to help them survive the cold winters, but it also provides them a little bit of waterproof. That first coat is the coat that will get wet, but it won't get wet all the way to the roots of it, therefore staying outside of that second insular coat that keeps them warm and dry. They also have extra hair around their ears and the tufts of their paws. We have records indicating that this breed existed all the way back to 800 AD. Now, while the Skogkatt, or more affectionately referred to as the Ouija, existed since the Middle Ages in Norway, there was a period in the early 1900s when it almost went extinct because of crossbreeding. It was not until 1938 that the King of Norway decided to make this cat the nation's national breed. However, with the onset of World War II and the continuation of crossbreeding, the animals' numbers still were almost depleted entirely. It wasn't until the 1950s that a Norwegian program to breed the animal back to a purity level really took off. In the 1970s, the animal breed was recognized by fanciers all throughout Europe, and in 1979, the cat first came to America, which is sort of crazy to think about, right? But again, cats didn't use litter boxes till the 1920s, so in the 1990s, competitions and breeders in America officially recognized the breed. The extra fur around its paw acts sort of as a snowshoe when it's in its natural habitat, allowing it to tread on top of the snow with ease. Like most cats, they enjoy their sleep. A Norwegian forest cat will get anywhere from 12 to 16 hours of sleep a day. You might be familiar with one of the cat's descendants, the Maine Coon. However, one of the problems of targeted breeding or eugenics is it keeps specific genetic diseases within the breed, and more importantly, fosters them. For that reason, and because this cat specifically was so targeted with that breeding, the Norwegian forest cat is susceptible to tons of different diseases, whether it be bone displacement or glycose intolerance. I'm not trying to make a judgment or any sort of assessment about pedigree, but I will say that there are risks to controlling the way nature produces itself. That being said, here are some of the most amicable pets out there in the world. And I should know I have one. Now, let's go live on the scene to Keith Brooks. Keith, I understand that you have a cat there you're going to speak with?
Thank you, Keith. I'm here with Eli, who is a Norwegian forest cat. Eli, do you have any comment? Interesting. What can you say about your Norwegian background? And would you like to tell the people why you're such a good boy and so fluffy? Are you a good Ouija? You heard it here first, folks.
Thanks so much, Keith, for that stunning report, and thank you, Mr. Eli Brooks. Again, my buddy Eli is the sweetest cat in the world. My ex-girlfriend got him from one of her friends. She was downsizing and had an older cat that was very territorial. And Eli is just the biggest love bug in the world. He has never met a person, a creature, or tree that was not his friend. He's so curious. He's so interested in everything that's around him. Super talkative. Makes all sorts of chirps and clicks and meows, and just always wants to tell you about his day. A lot of research will tell you that these cats aren't really lap cats, but my personal experience is quite the opposite. He cannot wait to snuggle with you. They are independent, and he likes to find his own stuff to get into, but then at the end of the day, he always wants to come back and either spend time with you or the dogs or the other cats. Like, that's just his jam. And I will say, you can see the climbing aspect of it, absolutely. He has, like, I think the cats have 5 towers, 6 towers, and a tree thing that you saw him interviewed on, and he just loves playing with it. He loves running up them, and is so fast paced with it. And he's a really clumsy cat, except for when he's climbing. or running down them. And he does run head first down, whereas the other cats will kind of jump off. He's adorable. He's the cutest dude in the world. And it's interesting, too, to sort of study the material that's out there from a scientific standpoint about these animals, but then also to understand that your personal experience might be different because the temperament and the personality of each one of these, creatures is so unique unto itself, shaped not only by its environment, but, also itself and the love it receives and how it's treated. I think my world would be void without Eli. He's such a good boy, my little son, and he's just fun. He just makes me laugh all the time. And I think that one of the great things about, I think so often in times when we're discussing animals, we sort of lump them together as a category unto themselves, that we just think of them in these swaths. But as we take them into our homes and into our hearts, they become very individualized. And if you think about it from that perspective and all the individual capacity that animals have, whether it be all the different cats, dogs, bison, cow, ants, butterflies, like the world is made of individual personalities and there's billions of them. And what a wonder it is that we get to learn and see more of them. So, I don't know. Thank you so much for joining day 6 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Hi, everybody. My name's Keith Brooks. Thank you so much for joining. And today, the letter F stands for flamingo, or those cool live-action versions of those things on your uncle's lawn. Now, a flamingo is a type of wading bird, meaning it wades out to the water. Most notable for its bright colors, generally pink or red. It's a member of the Phenacopteridae family and the only extant species within its order. Now, the word flamingo comes from either the Spanish or Portuguese flamingo, meaning flame-colored, but it derives from the Provençal word flamenc and the Germanic ending ing. But there's also some conjecture that it could come from the Spanish eponym flamenco, which means Flemish. There are 6 species of flamingos alive today, and for a long time people believed that they were more closely related to animals like the stork. And for even longer, they were classified as something called the waterfowl, which is where ducks and geese. But it's only been recently that we discovered that the flamingo actually has more in common with doves and grebes than it does any of those other waterfowl. In fact, flamingos and grebes have formed a new taxon that the abbreviated version, it's called like Miraculodon, I don't know, I'll put it right here, but the abbreviated version is the miracle bird because they have so many different anomalies about them. But it's important to note that even though it's not a waterfowl, it can swim. It just doesn't do so very often, but it is a good swimmer and an amazing flyer, very strong bird, but they spend the vast majority of their time in the shallows of the water waiting because that's where they get their food. Flamingos are something called filter eaters. Are you familiar with like the way that whales' teeth operate, how it sort of strains what's ever passing through it to get some food and stuff like that? Flamingo operates kind of similar to that. What they'll do is they'll step down into the mud, and that footstep is so strong it kicks up all the substrate and all the detritus and all that stuff. Then they will take their head and they will go upside down into the water. Imagine this is their beak, allowing anything to come into their beak and into their mouth. They have a filter-like system within their jaws that then they will swish their heads back and forth while using their tongue as a plunger to drive the water back through the filter system, leaving only insects, crustaceans, fish, that sort of stuff. Most people think that the flamingo can bend its knee backwards, but surprisingly, that's not actually the animal's knee. Its knee is up here, hidden by all the feathers. This is actually the animal's ankle, and it has the same mobility as ours does. And then what they're actually standing on are their tippy toes. But you probably know them most from their cool yoga stances that they're doing. The crazy thing is, we don't know why they stand like this exactly. It helps the bird actually conserve body heat because it's tightening itself up and putting itself into like a little bundle. Secondly, and this is kind of interesting, it actually requires more muscles in use for the flamingo to have both legs down than having one up. Whereas in us, it's the complete opposite. If we're going to hoist a leg up, our muscles have to contract fact, to hold it in place, flamingos didn't evolve the same way. We don't really know why, but it's a good reminder to not judge an animal or creature or person based on a capacity that you have and they might not. The 6 species of flamingos are the greater flamingo, the lesser flamingo, the Andean flamingo, the Chilean flamingo, James's flamingo, and the American or Caribbean flamingo. The greater and lesser are in Africa. The greater flamingo has the widest spread of habitat, while the lesser flamingo has more numbers. 2005, a pair of flamingos escaped a zoo in Wichita, Kansas, and were seen 14 years later in Texas, just sort of hanging out. I think they opened like a Whataburger or something. It's kind of cool. Now, baby flamingos, also known as chicks, are born with grayish red, almost completely black at times, plumage, right? And with straight beaks that sometimes present themselves as pink. It's only that the bright colors come as they get older, when the animal is digesting something called carotene, the same thing that colors your tomatoes and your carrots. This guy is a proof of you are what you eat. After consuming so many animals and creatures that have the carotene, it will eventually change the color of the feathers. A well-fed flamingo is brightly colored. The largest flamingo is the greater flamingo, standing about 5 feet tall, weighing at about 8 pounds with a wingspan of 59 inches. Flamingos have an amazing ability to open their beaks, either the top part or the bottom part, or both at the same time. Gathering of flamingos is called a flamboyance, but a larger group living together is called a colony. Flamingos are very social creatures. They talk a lot. They're considered noisy. They grunt, they growl, they squawk, any kind of noise. They call each other on the phone. They send text messages. They do all of that stuff. What's interesting is when they're about to breed, they'll break off into smaller groups, generally from 15 to 50, depending on the size of the colony, and they'll all commence like a dance routine, like all in sync, and not pointed at a specific flamingo, but just together to celebrate, hey, we're about to have babies. They'll then make their nests in like muddy areas, and every flamingo will only have 1 egg a year. It's often said that flamingos are monogamous, and that's true, except for in larger colonies when there tend to be thousands. Then flamingos will change their mate every year, but still every year only having 1 egg. Flamingos will feed their young with something called crop milk. Crop milk is what birds can create through the inside of their throat and stomach to throw up, regurgitate into their young's mouths. Both the male and the female flamingo will feed their young. Crop milk is a lot like mammalian milk, except for it has no carbs. So if you're looking to cut back for bikini season, the oldest flamingo on record was one in captivity that lived in Adelaide, Australia. He lived to 83 years old and died in 2014. Most flamingos will live in the wild roughly to about 40 or 50. The lower side of that is 20-30. As the young flamingos start to age, they form several different groups. This bird is all about having cliques. The first type of group is a really small group of hatchlings called a microcreche. Then they will develop into a larger group called a creche, which can consist of thousands of different hatchlings. But an interesting thing amongst flamingo and some other species of bird is that they will only breed when there are already large numbers amongst the colony or flamboyant. Some zoos will even replace walls of the enclosures with mirrors to make the flamingos think that there are more flamingo there, so that way they will, like get it on and all that stuff. So, and this is hard to say, it was considered a delicacy in ancient Rome. Most notably, we have recipes from 1,000 years ago about flamingo tongue, and gods all over the world took the forms of flamingo. Up until the 1990s, Chilean miners believed that flamingo fat helped cure tuberculosis. These animals are omnivores, inhabiting the shallow waters of salt water or brackish water, which is a mixture of both. But some flamingo will fly to specific areas known as soda lakes to have their young. Soda lakes are known as such because of the alkalinity of the water, meaning it's so salty that if a human or most animals were to touch that water, it would burn their skin. But these are hefty motherfuckers. Now, flamingo are being threatened by predators, poachers who go after their eggs and their tongue still as delicacy, and by encroachment on their environment. It's actually estimated that more of those plastic flamingos created by Dan Featherstone from Massachusetts in 1957 exist in the United States than actual live flamingos in the wild and captivity combined. That being said, International Flamingo Day is April 26th. But these are beautiful creatures that, as I sort of stated in this, remind us that not all life has to operate the way we do. That every species, every creature on Earth sort of makes its own agenda and operates by its own rules for its own reasonings. And I think that's a beautiful, awesome, incredible thing. Thank you so much for watching day 7 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Keith Brooks, and today the letter G stands for the Goliath frog, also known as the prototype for Battletoads. This little guy isn't really that little of a guy. In fact, he is the largest frog in the entire world. From his snout to his vent, which that's the word we use for frog butts, which I think is cute, he can be at least 12 inches long and most weigh up to about 8 pounds, making him roughly the size of your average house cat. They are located in Equatorial Guinea and Cameroon, seem to inhabit areas with waterfalls and murky streams. It gets its name from the Hebrew word Goliath, which means giant. Remember that oftentimes in the Bible, names that we now attribute to characters were actually just descriptors in the original Hebrew. His name wasn't Goliath, he was just a Goliath, that sort of idea. Interestingly enough, a baby Goliath frog, and all frogs, are known as tadpoles. And the baby Goliath tadpole is the same size as all other tadpoles. They're not born larger, they just keep growing beyond what normal frogs would. These frogs are an endangered species and very shy in captivity, and there's never been a single case of them breeding in captivity. They get super nervous around people and that sort of stuff, with a green sienna skin that is porous and allows them to breathe through it when in water and absorb oxygen through the water surrounding them. They have a yellow underside belly and the inside of their limbs. Unlike a lot of other frogs, they lack the vocal sac that allows most frogs to ribbit and croak the specific noises that they do. Instead, this guy makes a high-pitched whistling sound. The means of which he makes that sound is sort of still unknown to us. But they also lack something called the nuptial pad, which is found on the inside of their arms, which most frogs use during mating, which is sort of used to hold the mate. This frog is omnivorous, tending to eat different types of food through the different stages of its life. As a tadpole, the frogs will only eat the leaves of one specific plant grown in the specific regions that they are inhabiting. But as they get older, they'll learn to eat crustaceans, bugs, some get big enough to eat fish, and some of these guys eat small mammals like bats. Most frogs, and the Goliath frog is no different, require water for mating to occur. Now, while we don't understand exactly the breeding system that these frogs have, we do know that they make 3 different types of mating nests. The first one is using an already shallow pool of water. Normally, the eggs are laid in hundreds or thousands because these guys are big-ass frogs. The second type of nest is that they will create a specific pool by damming up the water and isolating that area. And the third type is that they will actually dig their own pool, redirecting water to a separate and safer space, normally moving large rocks to sort of outline the nest to keep their baby safe. One of the amazing aspects of doing this is it defies nature's expectation of mating season. With most frogs, they are at the whims of when wet season and dry season begin and end for their mating. The Goliath frog has found a way to circumvent that. With a typical mating season will last from July and August, the Goliath frog has the ability to extend that to as long as it can find water and make those pools. The male frog is in charge of building the nest while the female frog watches over the eggs. And as far as parenting concerned, these Goliath frogs are kind of hands off or lily pads off. I guess they're still hands, webbed feet off sort of parents. They'll have the eggs, sit on them until they hatch, which sometimes can take about 85 days, and then sort of let them fend for themselves. They're really latchkey kids. Now, these frogs have a lot of different predatorial concerns. One is humans. Humans will poach and hunt them for eating purposes. They will also put them into the pet trade. Because they are so shy and scared of humans, they're not breeding while in captivity. And also, it's difficult to recreate their exact environment from Equatorial Guinea and Cameroon. They are also susceptible to a couple different diseases and parasites. One of those is called microfilaria, transmitted by mosquitoes, mostly affected during the dry seasons. The microfilaria is found in the lymphatic and the blood systems of this animal. And there is a relationship between the size of the host and the amount of parasite found within it. So unlike most frogs, the male Goliath frog is larger than the female, so the males will have more microfilaria. Also, the infection seems to get worse in the age of the frog. They're also highly susceptible to a disease known as chytridiomycosis, thought to be spread through the international animal trade. It's a fungal infection that specifically targets amphibians. Remember how I said that their skin is full of pores that allow them to breathe in the water? That's exactly the areas that this fungus will target. Since that's such an important part of the frog's physiology, it slowly starts affecting them more and more as they grow, affecting also the sources of the keratin within their skin, leading to lethargy, leading to an obsolescence of muscle tissue, and then eventually death. It has one of the highest mortality rates of any fungal disease. It reminds us too that when we think of predatorial animal relationships, it's not always that the predator is larger than the animal, but sometimes diseases and bacteria are the natural predator or the invasive predator. Now when it comes to its hunting, the Goliath frog is a nocturnal hunter that has a sit and wait type of method of hunting, different than most other frogs. It has evolved to have a different sort of metabolic rate. It doesn't have to breathe the same way other frogs do, with labored. Remember, the skin itself breathes and collects oxygen, so it can be almost silent as it sits and waits for an animal or a fish or anything to come close to it before it snatches it. These animals are ferociously strong, with the ability to jump 9 feet straight in the air and 10 feet out. They belong to a genus shared with 6 other types of frogs, collectively known as either the slippery frogs or the giant frogs. So you'll often hear this guy referred to as a giant slippery frog because he is the most giant of all of them. And I guess he's kind of slippery. I mean, he's super sneaky. Grrr. And if the size of the frog isn't startling to you, maybe this comparison will help you sort of fathom it. Comparatively to the smallest frog in existence, I think it's called the Pymetitrine immunis. I don't know. I only know the Latin phrase for it. There you go. Which weighs 0.01 gram. This frog, the Goliath frog, is 325,000 times bigger than its smallest relative. The oldest frog fossil that we've ever found is 250 million years old, but it's believed that they existed long before that. And it's also believed that frogs are one of the only creatures to have lived prior to the dinosaurs and have existed ever since then. One of this guy's favorite foods is millipedes. He likes millipedes a lot. I think that's pretty cute. I'm always sort of stunned about the things we don't know. The world is still this untapped wealth of knowledge waiting to be explored. And it's interesting to see a creature that's this beautiful, that's this large, that's this cool looking, and realize we don't know a lot about it. I don't know. I guess I'm a nerd. I like knowing that there's just more to know. Thank you for joining me. Day 8 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name's Keith Brooks, and today the letter H stands for the honey badger, also known as the nasty ass who don't care. This ferocious little guy is also known as a ratel, or Mellivora capensis, which means the honey eater of the Cape. Located within Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Indian subcontinent, the Guinness Book of World Records once recognized this animal as the most fearless animal in the world, and oftentimes it's described as God's perfect fighting machine. It's not actually related to other badgers, and though it's not related to a wolverine, it actually has more in common with that animal than it does its namesake. You could think of it as sort of as like an overgrown weasel. There are 12 subspecies of this animal, all omnivorous. They love to eat roots, berries, any sort of vegetables, but also any sort of meat that they can find. Whether that be small animals that they kill, the hunt of another animal, which they will steal from that animal. And this little guy has even been known to dig up graves to feast on human corpses. They eat snakes and are somehow completely immune to snake's venom. They eat scorpions and are somehow completely immune to scorpion venom. And they love munching on termites. These guys love digging. It's one of their favorite pastimes, and they can dig through dirt, they can dig through wood, they can dig through concrete. It's evolved to be one of the most ferocious animals in the world because it seems specifically adapted to win and survive fights. Somewhere along the evolution of the animal, they lost outward ears and instead just have ridges, so that way they can't be grabbed or chewed on during confrontations. They have super long claws, an amazing sense of strength, sharp teeth, and more importantly, really loose skin. The benefit of this loose skin is not only is it like 4 sizes too big for the animal, but it's also incredibly thick. So thick that bow and arrow and lion bites have difficult times, if they even can, penetrate that skin. The idea is that if the animal's in a scrap and something grabs it, the animal can wrangle itself still in the other predator's mouth to completely turn around and then attack said animal, or potentially rip off a part of its own skin and still survive because it has so much extra skin. Because these guys don't necessarily pick the fights, but they will back down from no animals. Honey badger has been known to take down animals that are smaller than it, the same size, and bigger than it, including Cape buffalo and lions. In addition to all of that, similar to skunks and hyenas, the honey badger has an anal sac that is eversible. It can put its anus on the outside of its body to emit a specific odor. It's said that this odor is suffocating and serves as a way to distract and dispel any predator, but more specifically has a specific effect on bees. It mesmerizes them, allowing the honey badger to break in and steal all the honey that it wants. There's an old wives' tale about the relationship this animal has to another one called the honey guide. A honey guide is a bird that will look for honeycombs and beehives. Will then sing a song. The honey badger will listen for that song, follow the sound of it, take care of all the insects, eat what it wants, and then leave some for the honey guide. And now, while that's an awesome, cool story, we haven't really studied this animal enough to know if that's actually true. Now, the ancestors of this animal existed roughly 7 million years ago. That's as far as we can trace back specifically. And one of those ancestors is this guy who's a giant 4-legged ecorus who used to travel around what we now know as Kenya. Now, this animal uses burrows to escape any predators, but the interesting thing about its burrows, where other animals create nests, softening, putting bedding in there to make themselves more comfortable, this guy doesn't care about any of that shit. He'll just sleep on dirt. In fact, sometimes if he doesn't have the time to make a nest of his own, he'll steal another animal's nest and just kick them the fuck out. The vast majority of the subspecies of this animal are all distinguished by the different colorations that they might have. The honey badger is typically a darkish color with a white streak down its back and a bushy tail. The 12 subspecies are the Cape ratel, the Indian ratel, the Nepalese ratel, the white-backed ratel, the black ratel, the Lake Chad ratel, the speckled ratel, the Ethiopian ratel, the Persian ratel, the Kenyan ratel, the Arabian ratel, and the Turkmenian ratel. They're about 11 inches tall, about 30 inches long, with an additional 8 to 11 inches for the tail itself. Generally, they can weigh anywhere from 8 to 35 pounds. The females generally weigh and are a little bit shorter in length. Females of the species will have 2 sets of mammae, which is nipples, so 4 nipples in total. And we don't know a lot about the breeding process of these animals. Gestation takes roughly about 6 months. Now, the honey badger is primarily a solitary creature, but they have been known to be seen hunting together during mating season. One thing that we do know is that they are significantly polyamorous. A honey badger will sort of stake out its territory. Generally, we estimate it to be like a 13-mile radius, and they will have multiple partners within that area. I mean, males will have multiple females, and females will have multiple males. When they do, their cubs or kits, you can use it interchangeably depending on what part of the world you're from, are born as twins always, and always born blind. Hairless little guys, they depend on their mom for a lot of care in the first couple of months of their life. And in fact, some honey badgers stay with their moms the majority of their lives. We don't really know how long the life cycle of a honey badger is, but we do know that in captivity they live for roughly 24 years. Now, the honey badger makes an entire plethora of sounds. The cubs emit high-pitched whining noises, much like dogs crying, make a lot of noises like raccoons. They make big, deep, guttural grunts, and if confronting someone they see as a threat, they'll just straight up fucking scream like a bear cub, which is terrifying. Though it's not advised, some people in South Africa especially have honey badgers as pets, and they seem super chill. They don't pick fights, They end fights. That's the sort of, they are, what's that fucking show, that big ass dude that they had Tom Cruise play recently? Jack Reacher. This is the Jack Reacher of animals. That's what these guys are. Now, while honey badger is the English name, they're more commonly known around the world as ratel. Now, ratel is the Dutch word for honeycomb. The word ratel is also the Afrikaans word for rattle. When this animal is getting angry and ready to fight, it will make a growling sound that sounds like a rattle. It's also one of the only non-primates in the world known to make and use tools. These guys will use sticks to grab stuff if they can't use to it, and are known to commonly build ladders to get over shit. Now, the territory known as Basra is a governed state in the south of Iraq. In 2007, it was under British occupancy. One of the dark parts of this animal story are all of the rumors and urban legends that come out of Iraq during this time period, saying that prisoners of war were fed to man-eating badgers. And it's these guys we're talking about. The rumors state that the British would take prisoners, and in order to get the prisoners to talk, would put them in a pen with starved honey badgers. Now, while the British government categorically denies this, there was an investigation into these claims. Several different officers that served in this region were dismissed of their duty. In Kenya, honey badgers are reservoirs of the disease rabies. They are part of the sylvanic cycle of the disease, where it is finding host in wild animals before it actually spreads to a human. Now, these guys are very important to the ecosystem of Africa and Southern Asia and the Indian subcontinent because they eat a lot of pests, a lot of rodents, a lot of creatures that destroy crops. They also themselves become pests in terms of bee husbandry. Because they love honey so much, and who doesn't, they will break into beehives, destroying anything that gets in their way. So much so that in some parts of Africa, beekeepers went to extreme measures to poison these animals, to bomb them, to kill as many as they could, just complete extinction and extermination parties, stuff like that. Finally, a new movement began a few years ago to elevate the beehives to places that honey badgers couldn't reach. That simple practice that ethically ceased the need for eliminating this species paid off in droves. Now, all across Africa, there are stickers of badger-friendly honey. Again, we don't know a lot about the youth and the life cycle of the honey badger. We do know that when they are younger as opposed to older, the young male honey badger is completely driven by sex and food. Just tag me in the picture next time. But these are wonderful, amazing, resilient creatures that are basically the entire cast of the Expendables rolled into one furry animal. They're fantastic. They even have an X-Men character named after them. And misunderstood. I get why they are misunderstood. They can be ferocious when pushed, but they are survivalists above all else. Thank you so much for tuning in. Day 9 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom. Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Keith Brooks, and today the letter I stands for iguana, better known as the Puerto Rican chicken. Now, the iguana is a lizard, comes in a variety of shapes and sizes, ranging anywhere a couple inches long all the way up to 6 feet long, including the tail. For a long time, scientists classified the iguana as only 2 types of species, one being the green iguana and the second being the lesser Antillean iguana. But there are tons of other varieties of iguana. But for a long time, this suffered on the issue of being a complex species. And what that means, a complex of species, is when a lot of different animals show a lot of different variety, it is seemingly only in aesthetics and outward appearances, so you don't really recognize whether they are of the same species or diverging species with a lot of commonalities. But as more genetic studying took place, we come to realize that these are in fact different species. And whereas before most iguanas were classified as subspecies of the green iguana, now from the years 2007, when there were only 2 recognized species of the animal, to 2023 where there are over 34 and counting. This creature can be found in Central America, parts of North America, the Caribbean, South America, and Pacific Islands. Each iguana species has its own unique physiology and anatomy, but there are some commonalities. Almost all iguana have a complicated system of scales, with different types of scales in different parts of their body. The vast majority of iguanas will have a spinal ridge of some sort. They don't have ears like we know, but instead they have something called the tympanic ridges, which is the same thing that a lot of frogs will have. And it's just a region that's sort of flattened out, but serves the same function that our ears do. Iguanas have fantastic hearing and fantastic eyesight. And in captivity, it's noted that they recognize their owners and their caretakers by not only sight, but also by voice. Iguanas have a dewlap, which is the like Jabba the Hutt sort of, you know, old school grandma neck thing that they can inflate. This is used predominantly in mating, but also to communicate. An interesting thing about iguanas is they don't really emit sounds other than some small grunts and hisses, but they communicate non-verbally amongst the species. I swear to fucking God, iguanas will say hello by doing that. That's how they express hello. Isn't that insane? And sometimes they'll bob their head to let you know that they're angry. It's just a wonderful, compelling, complex creature. But perhaps the most insane thing about iguanas is they have 3 eyes. And I don't mean like they have a third eye. You can't really see anything, but it kind of can. Called the parietal eye, it is a retina that has developed near the back of their head that doesn't have an ocular region, but collects to the pineal gland. And what it allows the animal to do is sense and detect changes in light pressure around this area, thus helping them establish their circadian rhythm and being able to distinguish between day and night and helping their sleep cycle, but also helping them tell if there's a predator above their heads, which is kind of insane. A lot of lizards have this, and a lot of fish have this as well. Like most lizards, it has a 3-chambered heart, and like a lot of animals, it has 2 penises. When mating, the iguana will, I guess, choose which penis it uses that day, but the female has the ability to store its mate's sperm for years and years, just in case it doesn't find another suitable mate to help it fertilize eggs years from that point in time. Now, the vast majority of iguana are polygonandrous, where polyamory is about having multiple relationships, polygonandry is about having multiple mates for breeding purposes. And what happens when a iguana has babies is they will find an appropriate nest area. Normally they'll dig it out, especially with the green iguana. They will have a batch of eggs. The green iguana normally has about 50 eggs, and then they'll just fuck off. They'll watch the eggs until they get close to hatching, then they'll just leave. And so these baby iguana, known as hatchlings, will never know the presence of their parents. They sort of, from the get-go, have to fend for themselves. They have a lot of biological advancements that sort of help them do so. One of the most popular things about the iguana is they can detach their tail. Normally, when the tail detaches, it detaches super clean at the end of the vertebrae, but that allows them to escape predators, or if they're trapped in something, they can get free. Now, the ability to regrow the tail, contrary to what Curt Connors has you believe, isn't always necessarily true. The lizard has a more likelihood of growing a tail back when the younger they are. The older they are, it's more difficult. Iguanas also shed their skin, and oftentimes to help in that process of the epidermis coming loose, they'll scratch on like rocks and trees and stuff like that. When they're younger, they shed their skin more often than once a year. As they get older, it sort of dwindles down to once a year. The vast majority of iguanas are herbivores, though some do partake in insects and some aquatic like crustaceans and stuff like that. The smallest iguana is the spiny-tailed iguana, which comes in at 4 inches, and the heaviest iguana is the blue iguana, coming in at 30 pounds. The word iguana itself comes from the Taino word, which is the native indigenous people of the Caribbean islands, specifically in Puerto Rico. It was originally called the Iwana, and then we sort of just adapted it to iguana. When a male and female iguana do mate, it kind of can be seen as an aggressive thing. What will happen is the male iguana will straddle the female iguana, and it will bite its shoulder to hold it in place. And that bite is normally so aggressive that it leaves a scar on the shoulder of female iguanas. So this helps scientists figure out which females have mated before and have had eggs, which is kind of an insane way to look for that, right? And the reason the teeth thing is so aggressive is not only because they're just kinky, I guess, but also because iguanas' teeth are serrated. Now, let me remind you, they are herbivores, but sometimes they'll eat trees and branches and stuff like that and roots. And so those serrated teeth are sort of evolved perfectly to shred that food for them. Now, iguana has long been a delicacy in certain parts of the world. When I made the joke about them being the Puerto Rican chicken, one of the nicknames for these guys is gallina de paja. gallo, which is chicken of the tree. Has been a part of the cuisine of Mexico, Caribbean islands, all sorts of places. There are even in South America iguana farms that breed the animal specifically for food purposes. Iguana eggs are often consumed in places like Nicaragua. Now, iguanas can live anywhere from 4 to 60 years depending on the species. The banded iguana is known to change its colors depending on its mood, and the banded and marine iguana can get excess salt from their body by spitting it out of their nose, like reverse Scarface. The Caribbean islands are home to over 500 distinct different types of lizards, and 94% of that number are only found in those islands. There's collectively a group of iguana in the Caribbean known as rock iguanas, and some of them are only found on 1 or 2 of those islands in all of the world. The smallest of these rock iguanas are the Turks and Caicos iguanas, and the marine iguana will dive deep into the water up to 100 feet down to scrape algae off of rocks. Now, iguanas are fantastic swimmers. The green iguana can hold its breath for about 15 minutes, while some iguanas can hold their breath for 30 minutes. And in some studies, it's said that the marine iguana has been able to hold its breath for 4 hours. But iguana, like most lizards, love the sun. But it's not just an adoration for it, it's a necessity for it. The vitamin D given by UV ray lights allows the lizard to convert its food into calcium for its body. As a collective group, the Caribbean rock iguanas are the most endangered lizard species in the entire world. The Anegda iguana has doubled its numbers in recent years, but that still leaves it below 500 animals left in the entire world. By 2002, the Cayman blue iguana had dwindled down in numbers to 25 specimens left, but today it's at a whopping 500 and still breeding. The state of Florida goes out of their way to talk about how much of a pest these animals can be, and I totally get that. The green iguana is plentiful in its numbers. In the United States, it is not a protected species, and they eat a lot of plants and stuff that are endemic to areas, right? The state of Florida itself has issued a lot of alarmist sort of things saying that these animals eat cats and house pets, which couldn't be further from the truth. Though there are certain iguanas that will eat bugs and smaller animals, the green iguana is entirely a herbivore. More often than not, it is eaten by cats and dogs. It's also important to realize how much we demonize animals that we just don't understand. We sort of condemn it as being so foreign from anything we comprehend. And it's from that downright lies and rumors and urban legends originate. It's unfortunate because it paints all of these beautiful creatures in a horrible light. Also, a group of iguanas is called a mess. So that's kind of cool. Now you know that. Thank you so much. Day 10 of 100 Days of the Animal Kingdom.